I have talked on two different labor trends, basically increasing global labor mobility and increasing service sector jobs. Um, Basically, service sector jobs means, well, if you think about production, actually, production sector was initially producing things like clothing, shoes, um, tools, for example, which were initially produced by the people themselves. And service sector in a way actually is doing exactly the same. The things like cooking or um, well, hosting people, uh, well, things that were done initially by the people themselves are increasing. For example, cleaning also are done by professional companies, or well, they become services that are both basically. Um, And this trend might be actually another shift in the economic system. Actually, um, other type. Initially we were actually performing certain production inside our house, and uh, increasingly certain products were started to be produced outside of the house, and now maybe also services are produced outside of the house. And then we have a rise of freelance labor. Freelance labor is actually a question. Whether it is something new is a question by itself, because the long-term job contracts are relatively new things, especially for unskilled labor in 1950s and 1960s. Before that, I mean, people were changing jobs relatively more frequently, and in a way, they act as freelance labor. I mean, do a certain job for a while and then uh, take another job. Freelance labor is kind of like that. I mean, I take a job, I do that job, and then my relation with the my employer is ending, and then I take a new job. And in some sense, freelance labor might make me look as if I'm basically um, well, taking the role of a company also. Uh, I'm not selling my labor power, but I'm selling a finished good and service instead. But in other ways, also, this might be another way to organizing the workers by the company. Actually, instead of direct buying my labor power, it it actually uh, it actually uh, shift the production cost to myself. As a result, the risks are decreased because now um, the company doesn't need to buy, for example, computer which is necessary for the production. Uh, and basically, it can hire my workforce whenever they need, and it can fire my workforce whenever they don't need. Uh, so the traditional relation of uh, employer, and I mean, in a way, the actual significant thing I'm selling might still be my labor power to the company, basically. Um, in a way, I mean, the critical thing is I use my labor to produce what they want. Uh, Although the freelance labor is a pretty big discussion, I mean, and whether it is the type of labor which changes the whole labor relations, or is it just another way of organizing, as I said, the employer-labor relation? It is discussed a lot in academia and beyond academia. There is even a new type of class precariat, which is proletariat and the bourgeoisie combined, given to the people who are working for freelance. Whether they are different type of workers, or even a different type of group of people independent of different from workers as a whole, is a big question now, but they still work. Basically, in that sense, they are working. Uh, at least they are doing the main job, basically. They are not letting other people work and earning money from or let them produce what is being sold. So, as I said before, these questions are the questions on the freelance labor. And one question might also be, actually, in some cases, freelance labor is also sold by companies like Uber. And what is the relation of labor and capital? There is a question. I mean, in some cases, capital might be the main tool, provides the main tool and own the main tools that connect the labor to the customers. In other cases, it might be the basic employer, or the basic. It might take the product of the labor itself and basically uses it or process it further before it will give it to the customer. Uber and Airbnb are specific cases where capital is an intermediate in building labor customer, bringing labor and customer together. And in that case, actually, it is interesting because labor and customers are coming face to face, which is to some extent also true for service sector, but not always. There are always some behind. I mean, some workers in service sector which are not directly visible by the customers, working usually in their offices. But here, in some cases, in the freelance labor, in case of, as I said, Uber and in some cases of the freelance labor, basically, the whole mechanism is actually bringing workers doing some task and customers together, so they can come face to face, they can interact with each other, but that interaction is controlled by them, the company, the larger company, which is basically doing the communication, quality check, and etc. Well, the question might be, does it give to both workers and customers better organization power and maybe removing capital completely in between themselves, or whether instead of building a sufficient level of secure relation both for workers and both for customers, but also for the workers, by the way, is this intermediate capital is still necessary and will be still necessary? Is capital the organization power of capital is still needed because single worker and single customer are not able to know everything and their ability to organize is also limited. Whether their ability to organize is also limited is a question. In this case, actually, the workers and customers may not be maybe organized with each other without sufficient level of incentives, and you might need a actual company that is still, I mean, even though they come face to face, the way they come face to face, the conditions that are given to each of them might still be necessarily set by the company, basically. It might still be necessary for a company to set those things, basically, or at least control, regulate those things. For example, money transfer might be done through the company, and that might be necessary because you might not know whether you can trust to the employer, to the customers, without having a large company that is guaranteeing you the monetary transfer. And whether this gives to the workers greater flexibility or insecurity is another question. I mean, because in case of companies, the work is the time when you are working is set. So when you work freelance, that might, in ideal case, when you are flooding with demands, you might decide how much work, when to work. But when you are not flooding with demands, basically you might not be able to set your working time. I mean, the customers might set your working time. I mean, if you don't have a choice to reject any kind of task you don't want. I mean, if you are just surviving, and if you cannot afford to reject any tasks that are given to you, in that case, basically, those tasks will set your working time, and that working time might be even unpredictable, a week before or a month before. So that decreases your, that creates an insecurity for you. Of course, you might also face with no demand at all. That's also an insecurity. You don't know what will happen in next month, basically. In some cases, next week. Again, unless you are flooding with demands and demands job offers to you, temporary job offers to you, basically. In that case, of course, you are more secure. At least you can accumulate some wealth for potential time periods, but basically you might have relatively less demand, basically. So this is freelance labor, and you can see here basically GMP per capita and the self-employment rate. So self-employment rate is usually higher in countries where this is 2000. Of course, we should look to the new data, but usually this ratio is was higher in the countries where the GNI per capita was lower, gross national income. Well, online outsourcing is a special type of outsourcing, and in that case, of course, you should be able to find the workers online, which might be done by directly making the workers apply for the job you offer, but also specifically going to websites where those workers are available. And of course, in that case, the actual trust that should be built between the company and them, especially when those companies are small, between the company and the workers, might be a problem. Although, of course, the interaction might be relatively easier. You don't need to go to face with the worker in this case, and you can reach to a much greater pool of workers. I mean, basically, you can reach to the work pool of, in extreme case, all internet users in the world are accessible. Of course, they might accept your job or not. I mean, the actual people who can actually potentially do your job might be more limited. But all internet users over the world might still be accessible for you. And in extreme cases, actually, you might even make many people doing small tasks for you, which in return might actually create a product for you. As I said before, Google Maps is a case, and in that case, actually, you need to make the work you offer to be enjoyable, and the person who is doing it, especially when it is, well, in many cases, crowdsourcing is free, and since it is free, you need to find some way the person who is doing the job to be rewarded. It can be small gifts done by giving small gifts to the people, but also some other ways. For example, Google puts in front of your name a star when you make sufficient contribution to the Google Maps, and well, interestingly, that motivates the people. So money is not the only thing that motivates the people. So we will continue in the next part.